Hi, welcome to Debate Track. Today we're going to be talking about weighing, one of my favorite skills to teach. There's two reasons that I like to talk about weighing so much. The first is that it's a very powerful tool to win debate rounds. And as a debate coach, obviously I want my students to be winning debate rounds. The second reason I think it's so important is because of all of the skills in debate. Argumentation, rebuttal, collapse. I think weighing is one of the most important to enter the public discourse. So if more people understood the idea behind weighing and could really think in terms of weighing, my intuition is that our public discourse would be greatly improved. Weighing is simply comparing ideas or comparing arguments or comparing impacts. Weighing which one is more important, which one is better. And because at the end of a weighing analysis, you can get closer to an idea of which one is more important, you can direct your attention and therefore your resources, your time, your money, your words, towards what will actually do the most good, and not towards, let's say, what your friends are talking about, or the ideas that are already popular in public discourse, or wherever your emotions are pulling you. If you can analyze things in terms of weighing, it can really help both you on an individual level, but also society more generally to make better decisions. So, today we're going to go over several different weighing mechanisms. The idea of a weighing mechanism is that if you want to weigh two ideas, you need some kind of fulcrum to put it on. Imagine a seesaw or a scale with two ideas or two arguments on each side. What is the measure that we're going to use to decide one is better than the other? For example, if I ask you to find me a house, you might ask, what kind of a house do you want, right? If you take two houses, you can't say one is better than the other because, well, maybe one is bigger and it's more expensive and much nicer, better location. You might say this is a better house, but what if I have a lower budget? It could be that one in a worse location is a better house for me because it's one I can afford. Or let's say that you want to pick out a restaurant. What makes a good restaurant? If you compare two restaurants, it could be the taste of the food, it could be the price, it could be the menu options if you're maybe a vegetarian or something. These are all different considerations that go into what makes a good restaurant, and they're all different weighing mechanisms you can use. Now, with both of these examples, the house and the restaurant, obviously there's a convergence of the different weighing mechanisms. So price may be important in all of the considerations to a degree, right? It's just how much does the price go into it, right? Go into your decision, right? And if something is both high quality and a good price, maybe this gets a little bit more weight than something that's only high quality. So let's start with the first three weighing mechanisms. These are what I would regard as the stock or out-of-the-box weighing mechanisms that are most commonly used in debate. In fact, I've heard some people argue that these are the only weighing mechanisms, although I'm going to give you a bunch of other ones. So, the standard three are magnitude, probability, and time frame. Magnitude is simply how big of an issue is it. Magnitude is often best used if we have numbers attached because we can very easily compare a big number versus a smaller number, and we can see very obviously which one wins on this fulcrum of magnitude. So 1,000 lives versus 10 lives, $1,000 versus $1. It's very, very clear which one of these is bigger or which one wins on magnitude. Here's one example. Consider which of these kills more Americans on a regular basis: school shootings or airplane hijackings. So, school shootings happen very regularly. Airplane hijacks happen very infrequently, right? And so we might say that the magnitude of school shooting is bigger. I would actually like to know, never mind. I'm quite confident there's many more people who die in school shootings, even considering the September 11th attack. So, we know school shootings is a much more important issue, but which one of these two problems is our national priorities focused on solving or preventing, including billions of dollars of resources, right? This might be a case where there's an imbalance in the actual magnitude of the problem and the resources allocated to it. Next is probability. This one is very intuitive. How likely is this thing to actually happen? So even issues or arguments with a giant magnitude lose much of their power when the probability is negligible. So you can consider an asteroid impact with the Earth. It could end human civilization, it could end humanity, it could end life itself, or the very rock upon which we live could be split in part. But the probability is low enough that it's not worth putting our attention onto this problem or our resources compared to other bigger, much more probable problems. So this is probability. Another example. Which is more likely for a middle-aged man to die from? Eating too much barbecue or being attacked by someone on the street in hand-to-hand combat? Obviously, many, many more middle-aged men die from heart issues or stroke because of poor diet. But which one do you think they might spend more time thinking about? Probably a little bit more time thinking about hand-to-hand combat than, hamburgers ending up killing them. So magnitude, probability. The next is time frame. Time frame has two potential components. One of them is how quickly something happens. So if I tell you that you are going to die tomorrow, that might be a shock to you, right? If I tell you you're going to die in 100 years, you don't really care, right? Likewise, if I tell you I'm going to give you $1,000 tomorrow, you might get excited. If I tell you I'm going to give you $1,000 50 years from now, you probably don't care. Time frame, two components. The first is how fast it will happen. The second is how long the thing will last. And so if something will last for a very, very long time, obviously it's more important than something that will happen only for a short amount of time. Consider this example. Which of these will last longer? 1, the effects of climate change. 2, literally any geopolitical move someone on Earth can make right now. Which of these will last longer? Ukrainian-Russian war, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, a second Trump term. If none of these things result in, let's say, nuclear war, or you can also take away any interaction with climate change itself, the difference in time frame is orders of magnitude. So there's very, very little anyone on Earth can do that will have a very significant impact tens of thousands of years from now, in the same way that human-caused climate change will have an impact even tens of thousands of years from now. All right, so this is magnitude, time frame, probability. These are sort of the stock weighing mechanisms. Now, of course, these, as I said, these weighing mechanisms all work together. So the more weighing mechanisms you can win on in a debate, the more likely it is that you're going to win the debate itself, right? If you can argue persuasively for an argument and some impacts where you score all three of these things, especially very, very highly, it's likely that you're going to win the debate. If you fail to argue them effectively, if the judge doesn't really buy your reasoning or buy your logic, you might have to reconsider the role of weighing. So the most common example of being able to drum up some kind of an impact that wins many debates is nuclear war. So imagine, to take a step back from that, a US-China war is an extremely important subject. Related arguments tend to have a lot of weight because, one, the probability seems high that it will happen. There's different estimates of how big of an issue it might be and exactly how probable it is, but it seems like it seems quite likely that a war between the US and China can happen. It could also happen in a relatively short time frame, in the next 10 years or so. It can also have an enormous magnitude, even dwarfing World War II in terms of casualties, if in fact it goes nuclear. And so if you can convince a judge that a US-China war, that your argument, your side, whatever this policy decision is, causes a US-China war that goes nuclear, you can win this debate, if you convince them effectively, because there's not a lot the other team can say that will be more important than that. I should note also that many of the examples that I'm giving are sort of negative impacts, bad things, but this goes equally for good impacts, right? So if you can make an argument about AI, maybe, which has a very, very high probability of achieving some kind of general intelligence, and the time frame being relatively short, perhaps a matter of decades, and the magnitude, once again, if it's not bad, well, it could be good, right, in terms of solving all of these other issues, right? So there can be both good and bad impacts that you can apply this kind of weighing to. So magnitude, top probability, and time frame, these are the standard stock mechanisms. As I said before, though, any time that you weigh two arguments, you are using a weighing mechanism, and it's good to know what is the weighing mechanism that you're using, because then you can argue for this weighing mechanism. You can even say that your weighing mechanism is better than your opponent's. Maybe you think magnitude is better than probability, or probability is better than time frame. This is called meta weighing. And you can only do that if you know what the fulcrum is that you're actually weighing this argument on. So let's talk about some other ones. Severity. Severity I like to think of as magnitude without numbers. So how extreme or serious is a matter? It's hard to weigh, let's say, decreased food flavor or marginal changes in happiness, right? Because there aren't numbers attached to them. But if we take food flavor and happiness, we can say probably happiness is more important than the flavor of food, right? Although food flavor will interact with happiness, as many of these impacts will, right? Or many of these arguments will. Here's an example. Depression versus losing followers on TikTok. Which is more severe? I might say depression is more severe because it causes far more chronic pain and anguish. Although, once again, losing your TikTok followers is probably going to make you depressed. Next, scope. So, scope I like to think of as the variety of impacts that an argument covers. So, if a policy had an impact on health and education and finance, this might be more important than an impact that only had or an argument that only had an impact on education, right? So this argument reaches a greater variety of impacts. This one has fewer. One example. We can say, for example, that society favors some groups of people, right? I think in general, it's easier to be a man in society, right? I think in general, it's easier to be white. And as someone who's lived around the world, I consider that true in nearly every country, right? But I think the largest maybe factor of identity that can change your life is class. So being poor comes with a reduced lifespan, reduced health, reduced education, earnings, and a slew of other things, and vice versa for being rich and getting an abundance of all of those things, right? So poverty-related impacts can often be one on scope because it touches so many areas of people's lives or of society. All right, our alt mechanisms, severity, scope, irreversibility. This is maybe a sub-mechanism below time frame. This is what some people would say. And it can be used to judge a policy, because if a reversible policy fails, we can always try to fix it or try something else. But an irreversible policy or irreversible action can only be done once, and it can't be undone or fixed. So something that's irreversible can be seen as more serious as something that's than something that is reversible. So I consider reversibility to be a decent reason to try new laws, and it's one reason I really like the state-based system in the U.S. because we get to try many laws instead of just having national laws that change. We can experiment with a lot of different things in different states, which I think is a beautiful part of the U.S. So if we make the wrong move on gun control or on drug reform, or on a complete and total overhaul of America's healthcare system. What if we make the wrong move? It's not a huge issue because we can always go back and fix it. It's reversible. But how about the deaths that are caused by our current drug policies, our current gun policies, our current health policies? Those deaths are not reversible. Those are things we cannot take back. And so I think this is a great argument to try big and bold and new solutions to our age-old issues, because we can reverse these things. We can change our mind later. So here's some other weighing mechanisms that kind of work on the impact level or the argument level. But there's other ways we can compare arguments. So evidence is one of the big ways. People don't often see this as a weighing mechanism, but it totally is. You can win on, as you know, in a debate, the quality of evidence, right? If two pieces of evidence are saying the same thing, and this is what the debate comes down to, whatever the better evidence is can win. It could be, depending on the argument, the year, certainly the publisher, if it's from a more reputable source, probably most importantly, the author and their credentials. So is the author truly an expert, or are they not truly an expert? And we would always take the advice, the counsel, the opinion of the true expert in that field. So you can weigh on evidence as well. Framework is a little bit more technical weighing mechanism, constrained to formal debate. This is probably less applicable outside of debate. But if you tell the judge right up front, or you decide with your opponent up front on what metric you should judge the debate, what values should judge the debate, whether it's human happiness or economic growth or utilitarianism, then that framework can be taken later and used as a fulcrum to weigh your arguments on, right? To say who really won this debate. Well, it's the person who best addressed the framework that you decided on. You know, we really want to figure out, like, which of these moves is going to bring about the most happiness. Okay, well, there's your weighing mechanism, is the framework of happiness. Topicality is, I want to say it's overlooked. It's not actually overlooked at all in debate, but it's overlooked perhaps as a weighing mechanism. So how closely does your argument or impact actually relate to the resolution or topic? Even fantastic arguments about, for example, vehicle emissions have very little place in a discussion about standardized test validity. And even weak arguments about standardized tests would therefore win on the mechanism of topicality. We are talking about the topic, you are not talking about the topic, therefore we win. This can also be a strategy and a weighing mechanism. All right, thank you for watching this video. We have nearly identical copies of this small weighing rant at our blog at debatetrack.com, and also our instagram.com/debatetrack, I believe. We have a cool visual carousel. Go like that if you like the video. Comment below also with any other mechanisms that you can think of. There could be many, many other ways to weigh, or tell me if you think there's only 3. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.